Hello everyone, and thank you for being here today. My name is Kate Collette, and this presentation is on Morocco and experiential analysis. So, a little bit about who I am. I'm majoring in mechanical engineering and comparative cultural studies with an emphasis in North African studies. The language I work with in IGP is Arabic. Obviously, English is my native language, but over the past 5 years, I've studied classical Arabic, Darija, which is Moroccan Arabic, and a little bit of French. I'm a non-traditional IGP student. Basically, what that means is that I was only in my study abroad country for one semester. I didn't return for an internship. And so to make up those credits, I actually took a Arabic language intensive at U of A, which was really amazing experience. So as you know, I'm not a traditional IGP student, so this presentation isn't going to be about my research since I didn't have an internship. Instead, for me, the goal of this presentation is to introduce you all to Morocco. I think it's a country a lot of Americans don't know a whole lot about, so hopefully you'll learn something, and then add on to that a bit of my personal experience living in Rabat, and finally kind of tie it all together by diving deeper into the topics of language and opportunity as a foreign student in another country. For those of you that don't know, Morocco is a country located in North Africa, on the far northwestern corner of the continent. It's bordered by the Atlantic Ocean to the west and the Mediterranean Sea to the north. And at its furthest northern point in Tangier, it's actually only about 9 miles away from Spain by boat. The Umayyads brought Islam to Morocco starting circa 700 CE, and they were under the influence of the Ottomans starting in early 1500s. In 1912, the French and Spanish protectorates were established in Morocco, which basically established them as colonial powers until the protectorates were dissolved in 1956. And France held the vast majority of the territory, whereas Spain held power in the northern region, which is called the Rif. So some basic facts about Morocco. These were taken from the 2011 constitutional draft, the most recent draft. The motto of the country is Dieu, la patrie, le roi, which stands for God, the country, the king. Morocco is a constitutional, democratic, parliamentary, and social monarchy, so it's ruled by a king who is a descendant of the Alawi family, which draw their lineage back to the fourth caliph of the Islamic religion, Ali. Islam is the religion of the state, but the state guarantees to all the free exercise of belief. Arabic is the official language of the state, along with Tamazight, which is the language group encompassing all native Moroccan languages. The most recent draft also guarantees, freedom of expression, thought, creation, publication of all literary and artistic materials. So next I'll talk a bit about my experience in Morocco. Yeah. So during my study abroad program in Morocco, I was living in Rabat, which is the capital of Morocco, and I was attending classes at the International University of Rabat. The university is actually not in the city. It's maybe 20 or 30 minutes away by bus, but I was living on campus in the dorms, although a lot of the other students were living in apartments in the city and commuted to the university. So this is Rabat. It's located in pretty far northern Morocco. It's maybe only 30 minutes to 2 hours away from Tangier, depending on whether you take the fast train or the slow train. Like I said, it's the capital of Morocco, and it's located pretty much right on the ocean. So these are just some pictures from my time in Morocco. I was actually lucky enough to go to 2 weddings while I was in Morocco. The top middle picture is from the first wedding I went to. I actually went with the two other IGP students, Seth, who's on the far left, and JC, who's on the far right. That woman in the middle, the bride, her name is Hind, and she was a friend that we met while we were staying in Morocco. The other wedding I got to go to was the wedding of a friend of my friend, and that's the top right picture. You get to wear these really elaborate dresses when you go to a Moroccan wedding, and they're very fun. I don't know if you've ever been in Morocco, if you are invited to a wedding in Morocco, don't pass up this offer because it's a once in a lifetime experience. Um, Speaking of that wedding, this top or bottom left photo was one of the dishes we got to eat at the wedding called a chicken pastilla. It's like a sweet, savory chicken dish, and it's delicious. Um, the other pictures are just from my time in Morocco. The top left one is from the oldest hotel in Morocco, displaying the classic Islamic mosaic art style. And the bottom one is from the ocean view in Rabat, the city I lived in. And the bottom right one is from an old Medina, which is like the city center, the old city center that you'll find in most Moroccan cities. So you might be wondering why I didn't do an internship. The reason is pretty simple. I couldn't find one. And the reason I couldn't find one is because I don't speak French. And little did I know that it's actually really difficult to find positions in this, STEM fields, particularly like engineering, that don't require you to speak French, and that French isn't used in daily communications. And my university wasn't really a research institution, so they didn't have really any positions for me. So I had to search outside of university in the city of Rabat, and eventually, kept turning up empty-handed. I decided to attend a career fair in Kenitra, which is a city that's about an hour away, and it was kind of a last ditch effort. It was like, well, even if I have to move cities, at least I can finish this thing out that I started and I worked so hard on, and worked towards for so many years. And so our university basically set up a bus to take us to Kenitra, and most of the students that went were Moroccan students at my university who were seniors and looking for jobs after they graduated. And I didn't really see any other foreign exchange students while I was there. But anyways, we all got on this bus and drove to Kenitra, an hour away, like I said, to go to this career fair. And to understand the story, you might need a bit of background about my university in Rabat. So education is actually affordable in Morocco by American standards. Um, state education, specifically state colleges. The university I was going to, on the other hand, is a private institution, and it is outrageously expensive by Moroccan standards. So most of the people I'm going with are, coming from wealthier classes, and and our bus, this bus that we're riding to this job fair on is brand new, and everybody's dressed up, everybody's done up and wearing really nice clothes. And so we arrive in Kenitra on this brand new bus, all wearing our fancy clothes. And the first thing you see when we got to this job fair is that there is a line of maybe one or 2,000 people outside, just tons of people waiting to get into the job fair, and they're only letting in a certain amount of people at a time because it's so popular. So there's this huge snaking line outside of the tent of people waiting to get in, and they're all just regular people, like looking for a job, and basically doing what we're doing, and just giving it their best shot and hoping for something. Um, So, we show up in this fancy bus, and there's all these average people. And by average, what I mean is, obviously middle class people, not like this group of really wealthy students that just shows up randomly in, our fancy clothes and getting off this bus. And they start kind of just yelling and calling us names and stuff like that as we're walking into the tent. And of course, like, they know we're coming. They roll out the red carpet, and like all the guards like open the gate and we're all let in. We don't have to wait. It's just like all organized beforehand that we can go straight in. And so that makes them even more mad, and they're booing and yelling. And this was really my second light bulb moment of like, wow, I really don't know about the culture that I have just inserted myself into. Um, and I think that experience, regardless of the fact that I didn't get a job and it was completely unsuccessful, it taught me a lot about, you know, what it means to be an exchange student in a different country, particularly an American, and what you can, basically what you can learn from my experience and take away from that. So this experience got me a lot more interested in looking at language in Morocco, and I was able to come across this PhD dissertation by Brahim Shakrani, and he was surveying young students, like average age 22, about language attitude in Morocco, and it really revealed that Morocco has this incredibly complex relationship with language, um, particularly given their background and the colonization of the French and Spanish. So, for instance, this survey question asked to obtain a good private job, I should master, and you see that across classes and independent of how people were educated, um, French comes out in on top in every single category for what people respond is the language they need to master for a good private job. So that was my first interesting finding and really supported my point with having difficulty finding an internship in Morocco. Another interesting thing I looked at was what the language of business should be and what the language of education should be. So this isn't reflecting how language currently stands in Morocco. Rather, this is reflecting how young Moroccans feel about language and what they feel, the linguistic identity of Morocco should look like in the future. And there's two interesting trends that I found with this. The first is that there's a distinct difference between opinions as you go from lower to middle to upper class, with French being more commonly picked as the language of business and education for those um, in the upper class bracket. And the other interesting thing that this kind of made me reflect on is how the relationship to the language of the colonizer evolves over time, and how the maybe the generational weight and burden of being an ex-colonial country can affect your attitude towards language, and how it might depend whether you're somebody that benefited from that history of colonization, or whether you're somebody who was pushed down because of that. So this research and my personal experience led me to these questions to ask ourselves when traveling abroad. First, what impact do you have on the people and environment you're traveling to? I don't think anyone wants to be in the position where I was, in Kenitra, staring at people whose jobs, I could be taking and feeling really guilty about that. You should understand how you affect your environment and how you affect the people of the country you're visiting, because you're a visitor, and I think that's important to keep in mind. Second, how much do you really know about the culture of the country you're moving to? Obviously, I was missing a lot of information when I went to Morocco about, language um, and jobs and just like the fabric of the country and what the history and the historical context. So um, read books from authors in that country, and read research papers written by people from that country, and learn in those ways, and maybe read less travel blogs because they really don't help that much. And third, how will people perceive you? Think about it, think about how people are going to look at you as an American, based on what you look like, what your gender is, what school you're going to. See how like you fit into the place you're going, and how the place you're going fits into the broader like aspect of that country and culture. So yeah, thank you very much for listening, and on the next slide I just have some recommended reading, and after that I'll take some questions.